All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenna Guidry, and I am the marketing coordinator at Songtrust. And I'd like to introduce you all to our wonderful panel today. I'll let them introduce themselves, and we'll get started with Alexiomar.
Hi, Jenna, Julia, and the rest of the team that is joining us today. My name is Alexiomar Rodriguez. I'm a music lawyer and the founder and CEO of Seed. We are a gamified learning platform for the music business, and we're currently focusing on the Latin music side. But we never know what we could do in the future with the English speaking artists, songwriters, and publishers. So thank you for having me, and excited to join the conversation about mechanical royalties and all of that, all this news about publishing royalties and the new money that is going to be coming in for songwriters and publishers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Pernicone. I am the director of copyright here at Songtrust. So basically, I help to oversee our global registration of both the Songtrust and Downtown Music catalogs to make sure that our clients are receiving their royalties. And outside of work, I'm also a songwriter myself. So, the CRB rulings are relevant to me in more ways than one. So I'm really happy to be here.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for being here, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited about this conversation and just some of the recent developments that we're going to talk about today. So before we jump into the center of the discussion, I wanted to go over our agenda briefly and what we hope to cover today. So ultimately, we hope that you walk away with a better understanding of what has happened in copyright legislation up till now and what the newest changes mean for you going forward. So that being said, it is definitely a lot to get into, so we're going to get started. All right, so here's a brief overview of what happened between 2017 to 2019. In December 2017, the Music Modernization Act, or the MMA, was introduced to the House of Representatives for the first time. The purpose of the MMA was to streamline the music licensing process to make it easier for rights holders to get paid when their music is streamed online. And then in September of 2018, the MMA legislation with an added amendment was passed by the Senate, and the Copyright Royalty Board, which we often call the CRB, approved a historic 44% royalty rate raise paid to songwriters from an on-demand subscription services, moving rates from 10.5% to 15.1% of revenue. This decision is often referred to as the CRB3. And in 2019, the DSPs, so Spotify, Amazon, Google, and Pandora, appealed the rate increase won in 2018. During this time, copyright owners were paid the lower rate. It said that the industry was underpaid between $600 to $700 million between the years of 2018 to 2022. But aside from that appeal, the legislature also led to the creation of the Mechanical Licensing Collective, known as the MLC, which administered blanket mechanical licenses in addition to collecting and distributing mechanical royalties for songwriters and publishers in the US in January of 2021. So before we move on to the next chunk of time, I'd like to take a moment to ask our guests about some of these topics. So we'll get started with Julia. For those that aren't as familiar, who is the Copyright Royalty Board and why are they able to make these decisions?
Sure. So the Copyright Royalty and Distribution Reform Act of 2004 determined that there would be a Copyright Royalty Board, and it's 3 judges who are appointed by the Librarian of Congress, who is the head of the Library of Congress. So it's a government, a sector of the government who can determine the rates, terms, and distribution of royalties for copyright statutory licenses, and then also adjudicate conflicts that arise. And the first CRB judges were appointed in 2006. So we've been doing this quite some time now.
Wow, that's super interesting. I actually didn't realize, that's really interesting to have the backstory of like how they came to be. Thank you. All right. So Alexiomar, what kind of effect do you think the digital companies appealing the ruling from the 2018 judgment had on creators?
Well, in 2019, the DSPs, mainly Spotify, Amazon, Google, and Pandora, appealed the rate increase won in 2018 by the NMPA and NSAI, which raised mechanical streaming rates from 10.5% to 15.1%. So 10.5 to 15.1. And due to this appeal, copyright owners, songwriters, publishers received the lower rate while the remand was pending. So, pending the CRB ruling. That means that publishers will have now to ensure that the streaming services quickly back pay copyright owners. And although the streaming services are supposed to back pay the differences within 6 months of the verdict being finalized, they've asked for an extension. So, until the US Copyright Office makes that determination, it is still unknown when songwriters will receive their payments. At least that was the latest information I had. And so that's where we at right now. We have to, make sure that songwriters and publishers get that back pay as soon as possible.
Amazing. Thank you. Julia, tell me, how did you feel about the appeals as a songwriter yourself?
It's obviously disappointing to hear that, services whose entire product is based on songs. Something I have always said from when I started working in publishing is that without songs, there is no music industry. And we can argue forever about the value of a recording and all of that, and we don't have to. But yeah, of course, it's disappointing to kind of hear that songwriters are valued so little. Or seemingly valued so little by these services, especially now that that's kind of the main way that a songwriter will make their living. It's not really feasible for a songwriter to make money off of a cut on an album. It's a streaming business, and I know, from my colleagues as well and peers that it's starting to feel like being a songwriter is really not a real career path anymore. You can't just be a working class songwriter. You have to be a hit songwriter, just because the rates are so low. So of course it's disappointing. But obviously the work of the NMPA and the other songwriter organizations has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I absolutely. As someone who has also written myself, I can definitely share a lot of those sentiments and understand where you're coming from there. Well, I do have a question sort of for both of you, and feel free to tackle this one however you want. But it's kind of a broad one. Why is the MLC important to creators, and how have you seen their contributions firsthand?
I'll jump in and say, from a publisher standpoint, this is really the first kind of centralized database of copyright and recording information, at least in the United States. And, working with the MLC over the last few years to provide our data, compare it to the data of other publishers, clean that up, and really come up with kind of a source of truth for copyright information. And how that copyright information is linked to recording information has been really awesome. I'm, optimistic about it. And it's kind of insane that there could be so many different records of copyright information in so many different places. So this is really an exciting development for sure.
I would add the convenience for independent songwriters to get their money, because the music industry lacks transparency, as you said, and is is a complex business. After all, we're dealing with, copyrights. What is that? We can't, touch it. It's very difficult sometimes to comprehend the different concepts behind intellectual property law, and being so convenient for songwriters just to log into the MLC and just get information, educate themselves on how the mechanical royalties work, and doing it so seamlessly. It's a great advancement, not only for songwriters, but for the entire music industry, because we can take that as an example to, enhance our day-to-day work and innovations in companies like SongTrust and Seed and others.
Absolutely. Thank you both. All right, so we're gonna kind of go into the years of 2021 and 2022 and jump ahead a little bit where we see the next bit of movement. In 2021, the MLC is instated. In addition to administering blanket mechanical licenses to eligible streaming services, they ultimately have streaming services, including Spotify and Apple Music, pay them over $424 million in accrued historical unmatched royalties, or black box money, to distribute to rights holders. And in 2022, a decision was reached in the appeal with the CRB upholding the 44% rate increase. However, certain protections were lost. And most recently in 2022, the NMPA and the NSAI and the Trade Org for Digital Music Services in the US, known as DEMA, planned to head for CRB4. They reached a historic settlement for higher mechanical streaming royalty rates in the US with the DSPs on the eve of the Copyright Royalty Board proceedings, known as Phonorecords 4. The CRB was very recently announced their decision on December 30th of 2022 on whether they would uphold this settlement, which we'll dive into in a moment, and what that means for the next couple years. So before we go on, we'll kind of use the same sort of structure. Julia, we discussed that there was and there will be a rate increase. So what does this refer to? Publishing royalties, recording royalties?
Yeah, so we're talking about publishing royalties, the royalties that are generated on behalf of a composition. So the rights holders there are songwriters and publishers. And we're talking specifically about digital reproduction mechanical royalties. So when we talk about kind of the mechanical reproduction, that term comes from, I think they were called piano reels or piano scrolls or something from a long, long time ago. That was like a literal mechanical reproduction of a recording that, has a composition within it. Obviously, throughout the years that has changed to, pressing records and CDs, and then digital downloads, but streaming is also considered a mechanical reproduction. So we're talking about those digital reproduction royalties on behalf of songwriters.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Alexiomar, we also mentioned that protections were lost in the appeal. What protections were lost exactly? And do you know if they'll be reinstated in CRB4?
Well, to simplify it, we can say that the fight here is like, well, should songwriters and publishers be paid in the same amount that labels and artists are getting paid? That's one of the fundamentals questions the music industry right now is debating. And the other thing that is being debated is whether or not there should be a compulsory license, in certain circles for songwriters, American songwriters and publishers, and why not use the same, framework as other countries where there is a free market for this. So this balancing of paying the royalties, particularly the fight to increase the total content costs on the streaming rate tiers and other, like formulas for paying songwriters and publishers, those are the things that are being debated in certain circles of the publishing industry.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, and here, for this next question, this is something that I know that I visibly dropped my jaw whenever I read this number out loud. So Julia, we previously mentioned that the industry was underpaid between $600 to $700 million since the DSPs were paying the 2017 rate structure during the time of the appeal for the past 5 years. So will creators see any additional payouts? And if so, how would they be seeing those?
That is a great question. The short answer is I don't know. It has not, been sorted out how exactly those adjustments are going to be made. There, of course, will be adjustments made. I do think it may be specific to each DSP, digital service, but likely people will start to see kind of lump sum adjustment payments for activity during that time period. So if you're a Songtrust client, and of course, don't expect it right away because this is all still being figured out, but eventually you may see, something in your royalty statement that says, Spotify adjustment or something along those lines.
That's super reassuring. At least we're like moving in the right direction. And I think there's a lot of things that are still kind of uncertain as we're getting into this time, but I'm very hopeful, and we'll talk about it a little bit more into the next couple years and what's to come. But I'm hopeful that, these things mean great things for songwriters, and we're just all moving in the right direction. So yes, thank you for that. We'll hop in now into the years 2023 to 2027. So looking ahead as to what's to come, and what songwriters can expect moving forward. So the CRB4 proceedings were underway when the Copyright Royalty Board announced their decision very recently, December 30th of 2022, to officially accept the new rates agreed upon in the proposed settlement. So per that agreement, the headline royalty rate will be set at 15.35%, which will be phased in over the 5-year term. So what does this mean? Essentially, as of January 1st, 2023, songwriters and music publishers will be paid a headline rate of 15.1% of a U.S. services revenue. So I did read that music publishers may be paid via total content cost calculation, which ensures song rights holders are paid a certain minimum figure in relation to what each service pays recorded music rights holders in a year for their rights. So Julia, could you provide some more insight into this calculation and how that might affect songwriters who operate as their own publishers?
So in general, songwriters and publishers are not doing these calculations. This is on the DSP end, so nobody really has to worry about any sort of crazy math happening. I think kind of the simplest way, correct me if I'm wrong, Alexia Mar, but I'm pretty sure it's an option to either pay the rate based on total revenue of the service, or the total content costs in comparison with what they're paying out to recorded music. So essentially, that's kind of up to the service themselves. But I would say, for songwriters, the expectation is just that rates will be higher. It's not a per stream rate that has gone up, but it effectively may work out to be that. I think it's a little unrealistic to expect to kind of look at your royalty statements and calculate exactly what that is. But overall, I think the kind of connotations of this is just a higher value placed on compositions and a more fair compensation. And I try not to get too lost in the specific numbers of it. But again, yeah, it's a leveling out of the value of a composition versus recording.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. I know that when I read that the first time, was kind of like, the understanding the math behind it. And like you said, it is kind of, you're not looking at these calculating those things. When I had read about it and tried to understand it, I was like, oops, eyes glazed over just a little bit. So definitely, but thank you. Alexia Mar, so why is it important for creators to understand this decision fully and understand what they're entitled to going forward in 2023 to 2027?
Well, I think the first thing, I agree completely with Julia. These formulas are very complex, and they're like the DSPs can, choose between the two formulas. But as she said, for us, songwriters, beat makers, producers, uploading our music to a marketplace platform, etc., the good news is that we have some sort of assurance for the next, couple of years into 2027, that there are going to be some rate increases, so we don't have to be worrying about back paying for that period of 2023 and 2027. I think the second thing important here is that the industry is and the players are trying to protect songwriters and publishers. There are efforts to, enhance or improve the situation among songwriters and the publishing side of music, and also on the sound exchange side as well, for the master. So the good news is, in some, that the music industry is becoming a more formalized music industry for every player involved. There's more money, and at least there's some kind of understanding that songwriters should be, paid in a better way, and the fight is just starting. If you look through the different news, it's like, okay, we're gonna improve this situation going forward. At least we have something for 2023 through 2027.
Thank you. I actually have a follow-up question for you, Alexiomar, on that. Is there anything that songwriters need to do now to make sure that they see their payouts in the next few years?
Yes, I received this question many times. Yeah. Also, I was right now, like, answering some comments on our YouTube channel, and one person said, well, one of my friends told me that I don't need a music publisher because there's so little money there. And I was like, come on, man, that's the reason why in 2019 Billboard estimated more than $250 million in unclaimed royalties, because people are not valuing their own works as songwriters. So is there anything that songwriters need to do now? Of course, two things. I would suggest registering as a writer with a PRO of their choosing, and registering with a publishing administrator like SongTrust, because that way, as a songwriter, you will collect all of your royalties, including performance, mechanical, and sync royalties, on a global scale without having to register with a PRO or CMO, collective management organization, in each country your music is playing. It's as simple as that. You want to get money for your work? Register with a PRO and a publishing administrator like SongTrust. Easy and simple.
Perfect, thank you. And that kind of ties into my next question. I know there's still a lot of uncertainty right now of specifics, but I was wondering, Julia, in general, what does all this mean for SongTrust clients? Exactly what's going on?
I was listening to a podcast or a webinar that David Israelite of the NMPA did with Ross Golan, who's a songwriter and like real advocate for all of these conversations that have been going on. And he kind of said it best, that the responsibility of a songwriter now is to just keep working, keep writing amazing stuff, get your works out there, and hope that they perform well, because at the end of the day, these kind of small percentages are not going to change your life if the activity isn't there. So it's not an excuse to stop working hard or settle for fewer streams and expect a bigger payout. I think it's important to remember that it's still a percentage of total activity. So the highest streaming songwriters are still going to be earning the most money. And so I think it's nice to kind of take a little bit of a sigh of relief, like Alexiomar was saying, that for the next few years, we know that the rates are rising and we're covered there. And so now it's time to focus on your craft, writing and getting your works out there so that you can actually receive those increased royalties.
Awesome. That's exactly what we like to hear as creators. So perfect. Well, I can see we have a lot of questions coming in. So we definitely want to give enough time so that way we can answer all of these. So Yeah, without further ado, please be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A box if you have any additional burning questions for our panelists today. But we'll go ahead and get started with the first one here. It's for both of you. Are there any implications for the streaming platforms apart from the change of the payment structure?
I'll just say, I think that's kind of the biggest implication, and, I'm considering the fact that moving forward, I think there's like less of an opportunity to kind of take songs and songwriters and publishers for granted, and the expectation that, this is not going to be a one-time thing, and the songwriter organizations are going to continue to fight for fair rates. And so, expect that to continue.
Yeah, I think that new technology is gonna keep on rising and emerging. And I think the biggest takeaway for anyone trying to create a platform that is gonna be using or is based on using other people's creation is that you have to be aware of the legal implications, because it is not a victimless crime to use another person's creation to make money. And I think the publishing entities and representatives in the United States uh, have shown that they're gonna fight. So if you want to innovate in the music industry, like a DSP or maybe any iteration, possible iteration that we don't know of, know that you're gonna be held accountable for using other people's creation.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point there for sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a product like anything else. If you are selling a physical product, you have to, pay for that before you're able to sell it in your business.
And I think that kind of comes back to what you were saying, Julia, in the beginning about like respect for the songwriters and the craft, and that appreciation of its value. So definitely. We have another question here for both of you. What do these changes mean for the business side? So labels, managers, publishers, etc. And how might this impact how they work with their artist clients?
I guess just speaking from a publisher perspective, we are working really closely with the MLC, making sure that all of our clients' works have been registered properly there and matched with their respective recordings. That's really been a priority for us. And, it's a public database, so our clients can, see how their works have been registered, and can and will reach out if they see something incorrect. So we're really working on just making sure that we have that data as clean as possible.
For the record labels and artists, this doesn't affect you directly, but there are other legislations that are going through Congress that could actually help you in making more money, making other traditional outlets pay for using their master sound recording. But that's a conversation for another time. And I think the good news is that the music industry, I think, is in its infancy, because with innovation, AI, and so many ways to, in some way, like become more than just music, also becoming creating creative industry, and it's gonna open a lot of opportunities to making more money in different ways. And with new technology come new ways of making money for labels, artists, songwriters. I think that's the good news.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question here for both of you. Are there questions that songwriters should be asking their current or potential, if they're looking to add one to their team, publishers, labels, or managers, to ensure that they're getting everything that they've earned?
Yeah, I think Alexiomar said it best. Make sure you're registered with a performing rights organization. Make sure you have a publishing administrator, and that publishing administrator is working with the MLC. Like I said before, individual songwriters can register their own works at the MLC. So, if you choose not to have a publishing administrator, you can actually handle that yourself. So maybe if you're, working with a manager, make sure that they either have that covered or, that one of you is making sure that your works are registered there. But I think that's really the most important thing. And, if you're a SongTrust client, you're covered. We're sending all of our catalog to the MLC. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to our support team, of course.
I think education is key, because that way you won't be asking your SongTrust representative some question that you should know the answer for. So you have to educate yourself as a songwriter. You're more than that. You are a music entrepreneur, and you should see yourself as a business, right? Because if you know your craft, if you know how your music makes money, and you know the business side of it as well, you'll be a very easy person to work with. I think that's, education is key. Either if you're working with a manager, don't use as a badge of honor. I don't know, my manager handles everything, as Ari Hairston said in his book, but actually becoming, a person that knows how the music business works.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My songwriter friends, I have had so many conversations explaining to them why you need to be with a PRO, what a publisher does, what's the difference between just being, affiliated with ASCAP or BMI and also having a publisher. And it's really amazing to me how little someone could know about the field that they're trying to make their living in. So I 100% agree with that. Educate yourself as best as you can. No one's going to advocate for you like you. And unfortunately, we see kind of a lot of times in the music industry, it's easy to get taken advantage of if you don't know what your rights are. So absolutely, SongTrust obviously offers a lot of educational content, but, stay on top of the, NMPA announcements and, join those webinars, listen to Ross Golan's podcast. There's so much information out there, and it is complicated and quite difficult to understand a lot of the time, but it is so important for a songwriter to really understand what their rights are, what the implications of all of these legislative changes are. It's super important.
Absolutely. And I'd say that, the people tuning in today definitely taking a step in the right direction. So I definitely want to shout out everyone who came today and thank you for being here, because, it's definitely important, and, you're showing that you're ready and want to learn about your craft and your rights. And I think that's key, really, that you are here. So yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. We'll hop on to another question for both of you. Do you think we'll see any potential changes on the performance royalty side in the future? Or will we see mostly changes on the mechanical side since streaming is so popular?
So streaming does actually also generate a performance royalty. So it's definitely still relevant to the streaming conversation. I'm going to let Alexiomar take this, from more of a legal perspective, but I do think the consent decrees that the PROs are governed under, has a little bit of a weight here, but I'm going to let him take that.
I'm going to be totally transparent. I'm not sure how to answer this question, because I haven't looked into, the latest legal procedures with the CRB and the PROs, but I do know that, if everybody wants to make more money, so if the MLC is getting more money, you know what that means, right? Most probably the PROs will also want to, improve our rates as well, right? Because when there's more money, everybody wants to get their hands on. So although I don't have an actual answer for you guys, I do know how, or I do imagine how humans behave and I don't have a doubt that if there's going to be more money for everyone involved, the PROs are going to, you know, put their hands in. And also, some PROs are changing the way their business model works. For example, I think I saw a news about BMI going from nonprofit to for-profit company. So that as well can like lead us into a direction that they're actually focusing on making more money, because now they're going to have investors and shareholders and all of that kind of structure, more traditional structure. So that means they're going for the money, most probably.
Amazing, thank you. I think that's an excellent point, and I'm excited to see where we'll be, in the next 5-10 years, and what conversations we'll be having then. So, and then I think we have one more question in the Q&A, just for both of you. What are your overall feelings about these legislation changes? Do you feel this is a positive shift, or is there more work to be done?
In general, definitely it's positive. I'm optimistic. I think, it's great that songwriters have been able to be successful in, advocating for better rates. And it's been a long, long time coming. It's been a long time since a songwriter has been able to, make a decent living off of, selling a CD or a record or cassette. So, I think there is a lot of relief that comes with, like, okay, finally, we're taking a step forward. But of course, there's always more work to be done. If you think about the percentage still of revenue that's being paid to masters versus compositions, it's wildly unequal. It's unequal across, many different royalty types. The place where compositions are valued, equally to recordings, or sometimes even more so, is really in sync, where, a company could pay a publisher $1 million for the use of a composition that they have someone then cover. It's like the song is so much more important in that regard than the recording. And again, we could argue about it all day, and I won't argue about it, but that's kind of the place where, I see compositions being valued the most. And do I think streaming can ever or will ever get there? I have no idea. But of course, there's always work to be done.
I won't add anything to that. That was perfect. I think sync licensing is like the goal, because it's almost always 50-50. So until that time comes, I think we still have ways to battle and improve the situation. But there are good news that the publishing side is, making the efforts to improve songwriters and publishing royalty situation. So yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. It seems we've answered all of the questions. So I guess last but not least, panelists, do you have any final words or advice to share with the songwriters before we wrap up?
Just reiterating, keeping yourself educated, keep, attending panels like this. Stay up to date. This is your money. These are your rights, or, your clients' rights, depending on what you do in the music industry. But it's important to know what's going on and how it affects you. So, keep doing that, and make sure you're registered with a PRO and a publishing admin.
From my side, education is key. It doesn't take a lot of time to study a little bit every day. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes can make a huge difference on your career. And if you want to turn your passion into profit, you need to know your craft, right? Not only doing the creative part, but also knowing the music business aspect of it. And if you are a Spanish speaker, we do have the first gamified learning platform. So if you want to learn more about how the music business works, go for Seed Music in Instagram, YouTube, or whatever. And we are closely collaborating with SongTrust every month, every day in our content, explaining how they work, how they collect their royalties for you, and why we are true believers of the SongTrust mission and mantra.
Well, amazing. Thank you both for being here and taking the time to be here and for sharing your insights. I definitely learned a lot from this webinar, and I hope that everyone else did as well. And don't forget to follow us on socials at SongTrust, subscribe to our newsletter, and reach out with any additional questions. But with that being said, bye everyone, and we'll see you next time.